Hello. Can everyone hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Awesome. Well, we have several updates and want to get to the tech update right away because we also have a demo today, right, Rao?
I don't think he's on quite yet, Greg.
Oh, okay. Well, let's wait for Rao. With luck, we have a demo today. We had a demo on Monday and it was quite nice.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was on mute. Rao was having some issues with his computer in the last meeting and he had to reboot.
Okay.
So maybe we could just give him another minute.
Yeah, no worries. While we're waiting for Rao, Bill, would you like to go ahead and give an update on the PM status?
Sure. So this is for the project manager replacement of Kelly Foster, who left about a month ago. We've been sourcing candidates from 4 different places. We have a posting on Indeed, and we have 3 outside agencies helping to secure qualified applicants. So far we've seen 41 total applicants. We've interviewed 5, and we have 3 that I would say are still in the running. And we are continuing to source and accept new applicants. I also want to mention that I just yesterday put up in the announcements on Discord that we're looking for a technical documentation specialist because there's quite a bit of that work that needs to be done to get things caught up to current standing and to continue to be in place to move the project forward. And we did have this posting up earlier this year. We had a lot of activity, but didn't have the right person, but we also ran into some financial constraints at the time. But the project is such at a point now with the looming launch that this is work that really can't be avoided any further. So we are seeking qualified technical documentation specialists who have past experience working with software. So if you know of anyone, or if you are that person, then please see the link in the announcement channel on Discord and apply, or direct your network contacts to apply it at that link. And that's it. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Did Rao join us?
No, I don't see him on the list.
Okay. All right. Well, let's hang on a second. I'm going to see. I'm going to ping him. Hang on a second. Okay. So while we're waiting to see if Rao and Kent will show up, I will also mention that we had a really useful conversation with an exchange yesterday. This is a newer Korean exchange, and okay, oh great, Kent is here, so I'll just finish the sentence and let Kent go ahead and give the demo. Sorry, Kent, I didn't see you in the list. But the one of the things that they mentioned was that for mainnets to get listed on their exchange, they're really looking for mainnets with dApps. So I think this is going to be the case more and more. I mean, fortunately, we have a lot of exchanges that have expressed interest in listing RChain, but I think more and more as the more exchanges come on, as a part of the value prop for the exchange, they're going to need to see some dApps running on the platform, and that's we knew that to be the case when we predicted that as early as the beginning of 2017, which is why we were so keen on having dApps building on the platform, and why when we were why the co-op felt it was important to ensure that there was at least one dApp running on the platform. So I just want to say that the market is definitely moving in that direction, and we knew that also from conversations with more traditional VCs that they're shyer of investing in blockchain unless they see that there are actual applications with utility and value on top of the blockchain. So we really, if there are any community members out there who are working on dApps, now would be the time to come forward and start demonstrating your wares, because as soon as we get to mainnet, we want to entice exchanges that are particularly interested in dApps. I think that would be very good. Okay. So with that, Kent, do you want to go ahead and give the bonding demo?
Let me share my screen.
Kent, was that you? I didn't hear.
Yes, can you hear me?
Now I can hear you. Yeah. Okay. Good. Awesome. Looks like you're sharing your screen.
Cool.
Awesome.
So let me clear some existing directories. So today I'll be giving a demo of the bonding process. Specifically, I believe we gave a demo for bonding a couple months ago, but since then we've changed our API. So just to show that this is a new, and I would argue simplified flow. Before we required 2 deploys to bond, but now it's been reduced to 1 deploy, and I'll explain what that means later on. But for starters, I'm just going to launch a Bootstrap node. This Bootstrap node simply starts the network and produces a Genesis block and waits for peers to come along. And we'll also so we'll make sure that the Bootstrap node is running, and then we will launch a validator node, which will connect to the previous Bootstrap node that's on this terminal screen. And we will wait for its connection. So since this node doesn't have the Genesis block stored in cache, it will ask for it from the Bootstrap node here. And we can see that it's sending the approved block to this node, which I'll call node 1. And it has received it, and it is now running. So this is the setup, just 2 nodes, 1 Bootstrap and node 1 here. One crucial thing about this node 1 is that it is started using a private key that is not corresponding to a public key that is currently bonded. So if we look at the current bonds.txt, it contains 5 validators, but none of these 5 are corresponding to this public key, which basically means this node 1 validator or yet to be validator is not yet bonded. So we can confirm that by trying to propose on it. And so if we run the deploy and propose script, it will try to run against node 1 and it will give us a failure because, as I mentioned before, it is not bonded. So now let's go through the bonding process. So here I'll be using RChain, but this is a client-side API that was mostly developed on by Will. And essentially it wraps it contains both a thin client and some more wrappers around it that allow you to do some queries to the node server in a easy Python manner. And so the contract that needs to be deployed for bonding is it's called bond.row. And this is, if we ignore the various print statements, it's just a few lines of code. And what it does is it looks up the proof of stake contract using the registry and calls bond on using the looked up proof of stake contract. And when it does this, the funds are automatically withdrawn from the sender or the signer of this deploy or the corresponding wallet. And if that bond succeeds, then we should see this message printed out saying successfully bonded. So in order to deploy this row line snippet, we are going to use this Python script here. And I just want to clarify that this is really just a simple thin wrapper around the deploy and propose, or sorry, it's a thin wrapper that calls the deploy and propose scripts or API endpoints. And the client deploy, it just reads in bond.row, which I showed you above here, and deploys that to the node that this gets targeted at, which is specified using this port. So when the script is run, client.deploy will hit the deploy endpoint at this node 1, and then this client.propose will hit the propose endpoint for this node 1 here. And so we'll give that a run. And as you can see here, we get the successfully bonded message. And we should see on the Bootstrap side that it also receives the block from this first validator, which is now actually a validator and has processed it. So just to make sure that this validator is indeed now bonded, we're going to run the same deploy and propose script that failed earlier because it wasn't bonded. And we'll see what happens. So there we go. This time it succeeds because it's bonded. And yeah, that concludes the demo.
That was awesome, Kent. Thank you very much. Are there any questions about that?
If you were to run the rnode command deploy and propose, would that do the same thing as the Python code?
Yes. The rnodes deploy and propose are very similar wrappers around they're wrappers that call the corresponding endpoints on the server of deploy and propose. And specifically, since we're using protobufs, we can auto-generate any client call wrapper in any of the languages that protobuf supports. And this can be done in, I would say, less than hours worth of work. So it should be easy to generate these client call wrappers for any other language, not just for Scala and Python that's currently worked on.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Rao, are you on? Did you join us?
Yes, I am. My apologies. I'm having computer problems, but I can speak to the current update on where we are.
Great.
Basically, Sprint 36 is in progress. It started just this week, and the main focus is Genesis Vault ceremony completing the issues that were identified there, as well as the completing the investigation of the long proposal times. We are specifying out the cost accounting activities in more detail so that more people can work on the different actions in there. In the Genesis Vault ceremony, the issue that's being worked on right now is the required SIGs being greater than 0. Sometimes we are seeing performance issues. So we are trying to resolve that. For long proposal times, we have put in new metrics to metrics dashboard for locks and semaphores. So we're working on putting that in so that we can resolve not only the long proposal times issue, but other issues that are kind of cross-cutting across different modules. That's what we're working on. And you have seen the validator bonding demo. We have increased the amount of testing, or we are increasing the amount of testing, both in the development as well as the community. In the development part, we have started to specify the tests needed for the kind of parameters that the incentivized test plan calls for. We're not at this point specifically trying to do the incentive games or anything like that, but we're trying to stress the system to create the test to stress the system for conditions that an incentivized test game type of a thing would stress. So that's kind of what we're trying to do. Basically, our goal right now is to find bugs that would cause those kind of issues. And then at some later point, we'll be looking into the incentivized test games themselves. The other thing we just began to speak to is the there are two other things that we're doing in terms of the increased testing. We're looking at the Casper testing. Basically, the testing, we're moving more towards the network level rather than the individual node level. In there, we're specifically putting in some emphasis on testing Casper, and also we're enabling the running of long-running tests. Basically, we have in the dev environment, there are some kind of tests that you know the results relatively quickly, but some kind of issues show up only when you run, when you build like a whole number of blocks. So we're enabling the running of long-running tests in a parallel fashion to the short-run tests that are part of the integration test suite. That's what's going on the developer testing side. And on the community testing side, Tomislav and NutZipper have identified a bunch of repositories. I think there were some 70 repositories that they found based on looking for .row files, in which there are like several programs in there. And some of them actually are very old and have the old syntax, so we don't expect them to run correctly in the current round. But what they found is that there are some 300 to 400 files that are able to deploy with the new code, which these are contracts we have not tested, at least not in the recent past on the system, and the community may have tested them a long time ago. So it's good to see that all those contracts are able to deploy. In terms of the ones that have not run, we're trying to separate out the things that are kind of syntax oriented versus things that we think should run but are not. So that is still that analysis is still in process. So that's the and we have that's the update on the testing piece, and then we have started kind of planning for mainnet infrastructure as to what pieces need to be, what is necessary for the mainnet infrastructure, both equipment, but also processes and things that we need to monitor for in the mainnet. So that planning activity is in process. Let me see if there's anything else. The third-party integration, whether it's wallet, I guess primarily in the area of wallets, but also ROC to Rev conversion process. So there are conversations being had, and we're looking at technical options to enable that. So that's kind of where we are on as far as the development update is concerned.
So I just wanted to mention a refinement on the point about testing Casper. So one of the things that we're aggressively pursuing is making sure that we test Casper independent of the network layer. So while Rao is correct, the tests have a network view in the sense that we're going to test an instance of Casper by providing it with a message set or a set of blocks that sort of simulates what it would be doing if it were communicating with other nodes, so that we can put some pressure and then allow for more depth in that message set, so that we can see how Casper performs over a long period of time. But we can do that without having to actually connect the node to the rest of the network. So that's just a little bit more color on that, and that enables us to separate out concerns. Right, we want to make sure that Casper is functioning correctly, regardless of what network layer it's connected to. And then, of course, we also want to look at the combination of Casper and the networking layer, the comms layer, right? And so both of those deserve testing. But if we want to be able to debug quickly, we want to be able to run tests that don't involve networking and then tests that do. Does that make sense to folks? Silence is golden. Any other questions for Rao or the technical update?
Yeah, Greg, I've got one. Does in aggregate, how does the backlog look? And does the velocity reflect, the timeliness of trying to hit that launch date at the end of October?
That's a great question, and we should we should just answer that question empirically. So I don't have the tickets in front of me, but we can certainly run an analysis of the JIRA tickets. So first of all, I think we have coverage on all the tickets. I'm sorry, all the work that needs to be done is ticketed. I think there might be one or two ticketing efforts that need to close down that we know about, but they should be slated to close down this week because we identified some pieces that we wanted to go ahead and ticket. But once those are done, we can do an empirical run and see what the velocity looks like by comparison to our expected launch date. This is a great question, and it's definitely worthwhile looking at. So we'll remember to circle back with that question next Wednesday.
Okay, thanks.
Please keep us honest on that so we don't forget.
Okay.
Awesome. Okay, I think that's all we've got for today. There's some good conversation to be had in the Q&A session on Friday that won't be had here in this venue. But I think that's all we've got for today, unless there are any questions coming from the community. All right. So
I forgot to mention about the Chinese community testing effort. I don't know if you did, Greg. You want me to speak?
No, I didn't.
Okay. So the Chinese community has been testing. They did test Genesis Vault ceremony last Thursday, and they have more testing planned for this week and the next Thursday. So they are, I think part of their plan for next week is to also look at the ROT to Rev transfers and conversion and things like that. So any testing that the community can do using the sandbox or using any environment that you're comfortable with, so it would be very helpful. We are trying to do many of these tests are kind of end to end, so we're trying to get more and more testing done, so that would help us out.
Awesome. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it. And the one last point I want to make before we complete the call is that today is Nora Germain's birthday. So she's not on the call. I think probably she's rightfully taking a day for herself to celebrate her birthday. But today is her birthday, and I think we should all send her some good happy birthday wishes. And I will also mention that Nora will be in Seattle I think at the end of next week, and she'll be performing at the Kirkland Performance Center along with a bunch of my friends and fellow musicians for the Tiny Orchestral Moments performance that week. So sending her good wishes for that as well. All right. Unless there's anything else from the community, I think that's it for this Wednesday's update.